Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. Hanging out with Croog from Q Times today. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. I had found you guys a little while back. You know what? Now I found you guys. I was going to play Pathfinder 2E for the first time, and I was looking up goblins and alchemist bombers.
That is a popular build.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say.
A friend of mine, master of the game, is like, "Hey, we're going to do a Pathfinder 2E game. Do you want to play?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Bless you.
Sorry about that.
No worries, man. And I was like, the only thing I know is I want to be a goblin and I want to blow things up.
Yeah, goblins, and the great thing about that too is you can do the goblin alchemist build, and you can blow things up, do all the AOE damage, do all the persistent damage, and you can still have room to like get some elixirs in there, get some like party buffs, get some healing going. It's pretty great. I definitely am a fan.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do a whole lot of that, but I do have,
and you don't have to.
I have a master plan, right? And it requires chickens. Going to weaponize chickens.
Okay, wait, I have to hear this now.
Yeah, you make bombs and you attach them to chickens.
Oh.
It's not very sophisticated.
No, it's not a very sophisticated.
He's a goblin.
I like
no one expects the exploding chicken, though.
No, I didn't, and I was here for it.
Yeah. I'm kind of simple. And I also am playing the alignment I never ever play because I don't like it.
Which is
Chaotic neutral.
Oh, chaotic neutral is great. Chaotic.
I like chaotic. I feel like most people that play chaotic neutral choose chaotic neutral because they don't want to choose an alignment.
Right. Yeah.
They wouldn't do anything.
You don't want to tie yourself down, right?
Yeah.
I feel like most players that play role-playing games accurately choose whether they are whether good or evil or neutral, but nobody ever correctly chooses the other side of it. I feel like most players are chaotic by nature.
That is,
you know what I mean?
Accurate. Yeah.
Like if you pick chaotic, you're being honest. If you pick neutral, you're probably chaotic. And if you pick lawful, you're probably neutral.
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself.
I do like to play the lawful dwarf.
Okay, I can get behind that.
But,
I mean, I guess it depends on the rest of the party a little bit, but
it really, you have to commit to it, right? Lawful's hard, right? Because if you're playing lawful, like I see that also is not just being, someone that follows the law. I actually see it as less of that and more of someone who is very ordered in how they do things.
I don't think that the way that, and I think honestly we might share an opinion on this, but I don't think that the law is always someone else's law. You can be a lawful character that doesn't value rulers at all, right? But as long as it's like a steadfast set of rules, when this happens, I need to do this other thing. You can make it up in your own head as long as it's consistent. The law is consistency, and chaos is inconsistency or lack of consistency, right?
But all that being said, at this point, I was like, can we just get rid of alignment? It's like, it doesn't really do that much. And I don't know about in Pathfinder, right? I'm not that deep in Pathfinder yet, but
sure.
In 5e, they've all but gotten rid of it. In name only. It's like there's like a couple magic items that might say must be evil, must be good to attune.
I think that there's still a lot of alignment in the champion class. Like your alignment really heavily dictates everything about that. I can't think of much else. I mean, there's like alignment damage in that game. I don't know does that still exist in Dungeons and Dragons? I don't really remember.
Even like protection from good and evil has nothing to do with good and evil.
Really?
Right? Huh. Yeah, it's by type, like monster type instead, like celestial.
Oh, right, like aberrations or
whatever.
Okay.
So I'm just
I think maybe it's a little bit more reliant on the alignment system in Pathfinder, but I don't think it's anything super important. Like the mechanics are definitely still in the game, but it's not like in your face,
It's like I feel like the designers wanted to get rid of it, but they're like, oh, this is a sacred cow we can't kill. And Pathfinder is going to suffer from some of the same D&D isms because they have so much shared DNA.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I know a lot of people that wouldn't complain if Pathfinder got rid of alignment, especially as far as like class restrictions are concerned. I personally, I'm not that militant about it. Like,
Yeah.
I can get behind it. I could see it also going away and making the game fun still. Um, it's really down to the group, right? Like, the alignment in the end is like one of the most role play impacting things that you're going to decide about your character, right? And so if you tie it too heavily to mechanics, you're kind of like forcing a player to maybe decide if they want to be the character that they want to be, or they want to play the character the way they want to play it. And that sort of like that creates a rough like um choice that I don't think people should necessarily have to make, but also it could be fun to limit yourself that way.
I've always kind of seen it like a dimmer switch anyway, right? Like so it's like you're it's like autism, right? It's like you used to just have it or not have it, but it's not like that anymore. It's there's a spectrum, and alignment is a spectrum, right? Yeah, you're on the chaotic evil spectrum, but sometimes you can be lawful good because you really
Yeah.
care about this particular thing or person or whatever.
And one of my least favorite things about alignment is when GMs are very black and white about how like, oh, you can't do that because you're this alignment. Like, what do
Yeah,
you mean? Of course I can. I can do anything if I'm any alignment. Like, even if it's way outside the realm of what a lawful good character would do, people make mistakes all the time. You're super allowed to have your character make mistakes. And on top of that, if it is a genuine mistake from the perspective of your character, your deity is not going to come at you and be like, "Oh, you lose all of your powers now. Like
yeah.
you are no longer a paladin. Pick a new class." That's not going to be how it works. And if in the quote unquote real world, that's uh, that's just trying to limit your players. And
It
I'm not a fan, not a huge fan of that sort of
it
approach to
it
alignment.
almost made more sense like in the previous editions because you had to be so exceptional to even be a paladin. So I've been like I could almost be like, okay, yeah, you're supposed to be perfect because you had to get like you had to have a 17 charisma, and that's like when you rolled dice, right? You could only be human, so there were no stat modifiers, and like you probably had a couple other prereqs as well that were like 14s. So it was super hard to do it to begin with. So at least then, if you're saying, well, you know what, you're lawful good and you must be perfectly lawful good all the time, like it was a miracle that you were able to actually roll up to the table with a paladin to begin with.
Sure.
So, how did you get into gaming?
Oh man. Uh, I think it was a lot of Jake actually. This is way before any sort of Q times thing had happened. Jake was into D&D like a whole bunch, and I was not. And it was a whole bunch of back and forth between, oh, you should come play this game, you should come play this game. And I remember, I think the first character I played was like an Egyptian dwarf. I don't know what that meant, but
Yeah,
that's what I said in my head. And it was like a fighter, and like they worshiped the pharaohs or something. There's like a lot of like weird headcanon, and it was one of those like cliche moments where I didn't really understand the scope of what you could do in a role playing game. I didn't really understand the like amount of freedom that you had, and so I was just kind of like, I think did I ever even play a session, or did I just make the character? I don't even remember that much.
please tell me
But
you spoke with a Scottish accent anyway.
no, oh my goodness. I was so afraid of doing voices when I very first
Yeah,
started playing. I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. And now it's like one of the most fun parts is like picking a fun character voice and really getting into it. The role play is like my favorite part. It used to not be. Honestly, I used to really be into the like mechanics and the combat and like dungeon crawly stuff.
hmm
But once we started like playing as a group on Q times, I got really into the role play. I think that really helped, like having that consistently um a party that's willing to like put themselves out there and like embody their characters. I think it really helps you get into the like role play thing, you know?
yeah. I mean, it's weird, right? Especially when you're getting started and doing it, and if you have other people getting weird first, it makes it easier.
Yep. And it helps that like all those people in Court of Corvids are performers in their own
Yeah.
rights. Like they all have some sort of background doing live performance, whether it's music or acting or singing or whatever. And I am an IT guy that used to do lighting, so I don't really have a performance background, but they
Yeah.
definitely help like push me to be more comfortable and like make cooler choices and stuff like that.
Well, it seems like you're hanging around those people then.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah,
doing
yeah. We're
lighting.
we're we're friends outside of the context of the show. Like we
Yeah.
talk and chill. I mean, we don't hang out in person as much anymore for obvious reasons,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you
All
know,
this.
what are you gonna do about that?
Wait until they have a needle to stick you with. People, wait a minute, I've seen on the TVs, people are getting stuck, so it's started. It's begun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're everybody's optimistic, and I like optimism. Makes me
Yeah,
happy.
yeah. They're gonna give it to the healthcare professionals and then bankers. I think.
But a no comment on that one.
Yeah,
Oh man,
I
that's
know.
so the dystopian depression of real life. It's
So
great.
I feel like we could do an RPG based on that, right? Like you have to eliminate all the bankers so that the right people can get stuck after the healthcare
I'll
workers.
I'll play it. I'll play that maybe in like 5 years when it's not too real. How about that?
Yeah.
You know
I'm,
that
well,
that
I'm
that
very much of the mindset that you can either cry or laugh at things, so I just tend to make fun of
that's fair.
things.
That's fair.
Uh,
That's a healthy approach.
yeah, it's
You
a
gotta
it's a defense mechanism from a
yeah.
very traumatic childhood.
I mean, hey, if you got to choose one, you may as well choose the happy one.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Or maybe it's just an illusion. I don't know. I'm laughing through my tears. It's fine. Everything's fine. As everything's on fire.
Everything's fine.
Figuratively and literally, depending where you live.
Yeah, my head went to that meme too. That
Yeah.
everything's fine, dog.
Or oh, wait a minute. There's also a commercial where the guy's like on fire and he's like, "It's okay." I forget
Yeah.
what. I don't even remember what it's for. I just
I've
remember the
never
guy being on fire.
I've never seen a commercial with it, but I respect the company that goes that far. That's good. I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the other guy. There's like two dudes, and one dude's on fire, literally, and the other dude, yo, you're like on fire. Nah, it's okay. So, who knew it was going to be the metaphor for 2020?
Right.
So do you are you usually the player, GM, both? Do you have a preference?
Oh man, that's hard. So I'm definitely more often the player than I am the GM. Uh, it is way easier for me to like get into building a character because I'm very like I'm like a detailed min-max kind of guy. Like, oh, what's the optimal pick for XYZ? And maybe I don't always play those characters, but I definitely enjoy making those characters. Um, so it's really hard for me to like get into a GM role because I do get into the minutia a lot, and so it's really hard for me to do prep like
Mhm.
in a timely fashion. But that having been said, when I do GM, I super enjoy it. Depending on the players, I think with the right group of people, anybody can have fun GMing, right? Like if you're a new GM and you have a group of experienced players that are willing to like kind of hold your hand a little bit and like go easy on you a little bit and like show you the ropes, it can be really fun. Um, but at the same time, um, it's a lot harder to put the work in if you're kind of like OCD like me. Uh, I remember the first time I think it was the first time I GM'd, maybe it was the second time I GM'd. It was with two brand new players and Jake's girlfriend at the time. Uh, that was an experience. If I can make any one suggestion, um, do not GM for new players if you are a new GM. It is very difficult.
I've seen many groups that are like, I'll talk to someone like, "How did you get started?" And they're like, "Well, I wanted to play, so I got together a bunch of friends and we just played, and none of us have played before." Um,
Oh yeah, I mean if it's your only choice, I'm not saying I'm not saying it'll be a bad experience by any means, but like if you have experienced players and that can like help you, you should definitely avail yourself of that resource.
so I'm gonna go back like good 20 years or so.
Mhm.
And we did have like we had someone who was a new GM sit down to the table, and most of us were pretty experienced, and quite a few of us were GMs, and we made that experience hell for that person because they were terrible, and we were terrible people.
Yep.
It was so that I mean, I feel like now we've grown a lot as people, like us individually, but the gaming hobby as a whole, right? Um, so it would definitely probably be better now, but like they were like reading the flavor text and they're like the PCCs, and we were merciless. Um, and there was like, and the adventure they were running, there was just like nothing going on. So we were kind of like early 20s, obnoxious and bored at the table. So we kind of took it out on the GM and the game they
Yeah.
were trying to run. It was not good. I'm not proud of those moments.
And to be fair, I feel like even the best advice, it needs to be put into context. So even if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I got some friends that have played and I've been interested in playing, maybe they'll help me through. Want put it in the context of who your friends are. Maybe they'll do that.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll. I feel like I remember a situation early in my role playing career when I started a campaign and the players woke up. Um, they were like in on beds in like some sort of like laboratory environment, and I was trying to do the whole thing where like I don't want the start of this session to be, oh, you're all in a bar and you talk to each other, that
Yeah,
like
yeah.
cliche thing.
You're
I
trying
wanted
to do
to
something
avoid
different.
cliche. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So I had them make saving throws to like wake up in a specific order so that like they could I didn't have to deal with them all waking up simultaneously and like
You're not
reactions
all going to talk at me at once.
exactly. And I think Jake was the first person to wake up, and I think the first thing Jake did was like grab a corpse from an adjacent bed and put it on one of the players' beds, and I was just like, why would you do that? Why would you do that to this person? And it was just because he wanted to mess with me.
Yeah, yeah. That's solid. Know the people you're going to be playing with for sure.
Yep. So I
Goes a
mean,
long way.
if you've never seen me GM Jake on a Q Time show, that is part of the reason why.
Where on the course did Jake touch you?
In the brain.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just kidding, obviously. I've GM Jake a bunch and he's a great player.
I really do enjoy running games for GMs. I feel like GMs they make the best players and the worst players at the same time, right? Like either they're like, Sunday afternoon quarterbacking you from the armchair, or they're like there to do stuff and play the game.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think it's sort of like a one or the other situation though. Because
yeah, there's no middle ground.
Yeah, I've personally never met a GM that makes awesome, great, interesting choices and also is that guy at the table who's like
Yeah,
trying to bring everyone down with their actuallys.
yeah, yeah.
But when a GM's a good player, they're a great player,
So I will say at the table, I try and facilitate and play the game, but on the inside, I am that guy. I'm totally judging every decision you made and be like, I would have did it this way. But I feel like, and there's a point in my life where I would have told you about it, but I feel like I've grown as a person and I'm able to internalize that and be like, hey,
sure,
don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole.
Well, and that's kind of why at the beginning, because we know a lot of people that like watch our shows are GMs, right? So when we do core to core bids, which is just like a home game, we're not like, it's not scripted, it's not any sort of pre-planned. I mean, maybe every once in a while we'll get some information off camera that the audience doesn't necessarily have knowledge of, but that's a lie just as often as it is the truth. So we always start by saying this is a home game. We're not necessarily playing like everything 100% by the book. Don't get frustrated. Like you can definitely correct us if you want, and we might accept your correction. We might not. We might be doing it on purpose. We might want to change certain rules, and we're allowed to do that because that's how role playing games work.
And we might make fun of you for being a rules lawyer nerd.
Well, and there's been times where we've been corrected in chat, and we're like, "Oh, we super didn't know that. Let's take that into account now." Because
How many times have you done something and it's just like it's some unspoken homebrew rule that your group has and you just forgot that it's a homebrew rule?
Definitely, 100% definitely. I'm trying to think of like a good example.
Yeah.
Man, I can't think of a good example. Of
So
course I can't.
in 5e you have advantage and disadvantage. They still have it in Pathfinder 2. They just don't call it that. And at some point we're just like, when you have inspiration, you can then choose to use that and get advantage. And you're supposed to do it beforehand, but we've never done it that way. And just be like, hey, you got this thing. If you want to use it whenever you want. So it totally became ingrained in our brains that was the rule.
That's how it works. And it's definitely not how it works.
Definitely not how it works. And then you go to someone else's table and they're like, hey, you go to do that. And they're like, that's not how that works. I'm like, what do you mean? And I may or may not have done that on a stream. So
it's funny because I feel like that whole entire situation comes from Monopoly. The board game Monopoly.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that was like my first exposure to like
losing friends over a game. Wow.
No, to just like really, really ingrained homebrew rules. I don't know why that just popped in my head, but like it reminds me of Monopoly for some reason.
And there's like a collective, there's collective homebrew rules for that particular game that everybody uses, and no one knows that it's not really the rule.
Yeah, nobody remembers, and then you just have this like symbiotic like mind link with other people who think similarly to you, and you're like, oh yeah, this and this and this and this, and then you reach this point where you diverge, and you're like, oh, these are all homebrew rules that we made up, and this isn't actually how you play the game. Cool.
So it's like the experiment they did with I think they use like a yogurt and they split it so it's the same yogurt, same cultures, and like do something to like it in one place and it happens in the other place as well. That's how Monopoly works.
Yeah, there's a word for that, but I don't know what it is.
There is to it. I can't think of it.
Yeah, it's a science fun word. I think that I
fill it in.
Yeah, right. Eventually. I remember now that I think we homebrew flanking on our show. And I don't think any of us really actively realize that we homebrew flanking because I think the flanking rules are more complex than any of us really think about. But I'm pretty sure we homebrew flanking. I think we have to I think we homebrew the positions of flankers a little bit in the sense that we allow people to be flanked that I think we have to like draw a line between the two characters we think are flanking the character in the middle, and it has to like pass through the center of that character's space.
Well, I think that's how it works.
Yeah, I think that's how it works too, but I don't think that's what we do.
Oh, okay.
Like if there's like a large creature, you have to be like on opposite corners instead of just like on opposite sides. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
But we don't actually use a map, so it's a little bit easier to kind of fudge that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't. Most of our stuff is theater of the mind. Occasionally, I'm playing games with VTTs, and then so Ted likes making terrain and stuff. And obviously, like all of our games are online now and virtual. So one of the things he's been doing recently is he sets up a separate camera, does the terrain, and puts out the minis and the monsters and everything. You can kind of see it, and then like jackasses were pointing at the screen, go, "Move me here!"
I mean, of course. I don't know. Jake may have mentioned this one. I don't fully remember if Jake talked about this, but we used to live together, and one of the things that enabled us to do was we purchased a 3D printer together.
Yeah,
and it was like what's it called?
Mutual shared property.
Yeah, exactly. Which now resides 100% at his place because COVID. But it's like an FDM printer, which is like super detailed. It like draws prints out of resin instead of doing it like layer by layer with like a nozzle. Okay. It was really cool. And we used it to make like walls and like minis, like spiders and like monsters and stuff like that. It was so cool.
I don't believe you. I think he's just 3D printing fezzes.
Honestly, I buy it 100%. I buy it. I don't think that any choice that Jake makes has to be about a fez. Definitely 100%.
Yeah. I think we spent way too much time talking about fezzes last time.
Did you? How much stuff is there is to say about fezzes aside from like where did you
And
why
why?
did you start wearing a fez? Where did you get your fez? Okay, hold on. There's a lot of stuff you could say about Jake's fez.
Well, and then you need the fez with your logo on it. Yeah, fez merch. I think we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, I heard that was happening. By the way, when do I get my fez, Jake?
That would be weird if you both wear fezzes, though.
I've actually had a fez just as long as Jake has, but I don't think I've ever worn it on a show. But it's first of all, it's like this big. It's like smaller than my palm.
Oh, that's great.
Goes on my head at an angle, and it's adorable. But I just don't wear it on the show. It doesn't grant me my power like Jake's fez.
I understand, but now
it's also
you
really
get to
hard
be
with this hair.
Now you get to be a head in the box. So
yeah, I'm trying to make that different. I really, as much as it's a fun meme,
yeah,
it's really difficult to like see my face.
Yeah.
Somebody pointed that out in the comments, so I was like,
well, what if Jake builds you a body to put the to put the screen on?
Jacob, can you build me a body? I want to be an automaton. I would like it so that I can use my keyboard to control its limbs and like put it over your mouth when you talk.
Didn't Sheldon do that in Big Bang Theory?
I haven't watched Big Bang Theory in so long. Is that still on?
It is. I guess it's a reruns. My wife likes to watch it. But yeah, so you could definitely do the Sheldon thing.
I'm into it.
Or you can just green screen, but
Yeah,
I mean that's what we do now. Next to the robot body.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean that's what we've been doing is like I screen me, and then Ted sits in the kind of the studio space. It just happens to be a nook in his basement. So
yeah, but I mean you guys also recorded live before that whole thing. It's like it's a huge difference for us. Like the amount of, first of all, just the delay, like even it's not even that long of a delay, right? But like having a conversation face to face versus over the internet, it makes it really it feels really cumbersome to like play off of each other. And then on top of that, it's a huge pain to like look at each other, because you want to look at the camera, but you want to like look at the person. And then the third, and in my personal opinion, worst thing is you can't touch each other. You can't like push or elbow. And this sounds violent. I don't mean for this to sound as violent as it does, but like human interaction is important.
Yeah.
When you're trying to get a point across, you know what I mean? No, it feels so different. And I can't wait for us to be able to film in the same location again.
No, I totally get that. Although I don't miss the commute. I can tell you that much.
That's fair. Yeah. We're not that far apart, thankfully, like 20 minutes or something. So not the end of the world.
Yeah. I've actually been pushing for the Nerdarchy Costa Rican compound for a long time. I just haven't had any takers yet.
Yeah. If you managed to pull that off, let me know.
Yeah, definitely. I went down there for like this high level training, but it was also at a like all inclusive resort. So like this would be great. Cost of living's better.
If you can throw some of that all inclusive my way, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't think I can throw it my way at this point. But
that's fair. Yeah.
But it was definitely a cool experience, and I'm trying to get. I've been trying to get the lads on board. Like, we'll just move our whole family down there, and Ted's day job now is and has been since forever. He works from home anyway, so I was like, you can do that anyways. How much more money you'll have?
Right. That's one of the upsides, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. But both him and his sister, which I'm married to his sister, they have a close knit family, so they would never do it. I want to see them. Where my
That's
family
nice.
has always been like really small, and we don't like to congregate or spend time together. So
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. That is a mirror of my experience.
just like, and her family has always been very large, and they like to congregate. I'm like, you guys are just setting yourself up for the perfect tactical strike. Like this isn't good. You're not thinking defensively here.
Wow.
I'm also kind of
Defensively.
introverted and have nothing in common with most of her family. So,
Sure, sure, sure.
so I'm
Yeah,
like,
and
also you traumatize me every time you have a family gathering.
I'm lucky in that most of my family and a lot of my friends are very introverted, so it's kind of like a everybody understands each other's situation.
Let's all be alone together.
Yeah, let's all be alone together. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, you guys over on Q Times, you guys play a bunch of different games.
Yeah, we don't just do Pathfinder. I mean, Jake and I do a lot of Pathfinder content because that's what sort of got us our audience, and we know
Yeah,
that there's a large like number of people that watch our content that like Pathfinder. But there's a lot of systems out there, and a lot of them are very good. Like I've been known to evangelize Fate Core a whole bunch, not because Fate Core has like sponsored us to do that, just because I like the system a whole bunch. It's really there's a lot of different like there's a lot of systems, right? And you can say that some of them are good and some of them are worse and some of them are better. I think that a lot of the RPG systems that exist fill different like niches. Like there's some stories that are better told with certain systems than others. And I think Fate Core is really fun to explore characters and stories that sort of fit outside the the scope of what any given system wants to tell with its setting, right? So like if you want to do a a fantasy game, you could use Pathfinder, and that's really great. And if you want to do a sci-fi game, you can use Starfinder, and that's really great. But those aren't the only two settings, right? They're very common RPG settings, but they aren't the only two settings, right? What if you want a system that's like all about um, characters that like live on a train, and you want to like explain the mechanics of characters that only live on a train, and you don't like, and I'm saying like the whole civilization is on this one vehicle, and that constraint sort of leads to certain things being accessible and certain other things being inaccessible. Like who's going to drive a car? Zero people. So like, do I need this driving feature? Probably not, but like the technology is advanced enough that I can use like most of the Starfinder rules. Why don't I just use Fate? Because it lets you just customize everything. Take away skills, add skills, make your feats from scratch. It doesn't matter. It's so freeform, and I think it's like one of the most one of the easiest to use systems that doesn't hold your hand at all. Like you can do some really cool stuff with it, but you can also just like shoot yourself in the foot. That's why I think it's not necessarily the best choice for every story that you want to tell,
Mm.
but it's really flexible and really cool and really fun.
Yeah. I've played like Fate Core once, Fate Accelerated a couple times. But yeah, I dig rules light systems and some of the rules light generic systems where you can just like, we want to do this tonight, and you know, there isn't something that already does that. So generally, like Fate Accelerated, Fate Core, Cipher System, powered by Apocalypse games, or all those are kind of great for that kind of stuff. For jumping in. Recently played Monster of the Week, which was a lot of fun, and also
Yeah.
very easy to just jump in and start playing without like
Yep.
learning. And your D&D and Pathfinder and Starfinder systems are a lot harder to do that with. They
Yep.
require more knowledge and understanding. So I feel like the older I get, the more I'm into rules like games.
Yeah, because it's like it's also from like a content creator perspective, right? It's way easier to just like do the role play and just kind of ignore everything else instead of like having to stop and think about, oh, what does this rule say about this thing? Like, no, you just go, just do the role play stuff, and like the mechanics will sort themselves out as you go.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a lot easier with rules like games too. Like,
yeah,
and when it's a rules like game, people pay attention and care less whether or not you got the rule right.
exactly,
So
because
you,
it could have been different anyways, right? So
yeah,
who cares? And I think a lot of people would say, "Oh, but I really value the accuracy of the rules and
yeah.
whatever." I I I sort of beg to differ because I think if we stopped playing a game and looked up a rule, you would be even more bored than you would be if you'd done that at your own table at home, right? Because it would just be like I was watching this and now it just kind of stopped and like we're just like sitting there twiddling our thumbs, like, you know. So
We get
it's just a lot. It's a lot more continuous when you don't have to worry about that.
we'll get put. I'll get pushback on like comments like that in the comments, and we've got like 3,000 plus videos up, so it's a
Sure.
lot of comments, right?
Yep.
And inevitably, there's definitely a bunch of them that go something like, "Yes, but without the shared rule system to exist within blah blah." I'm like, you're putting me to sleep just explaining to me why you think this is so important.
Look, and I think having rules is an important thing. It's just like less than um, less than most people would think intuitively. You
There's a
can
specific
break.
subset of people that really care about that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think honestly, if that's where you have fun, if that's where a person if that's what a person enjoys, and you can find a group of people that also enjoy that, then enjoy it. I don't care what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. As long as you're enjoying yourself, that's fine by me. Whatever it is that gets you there and doesn't hurt other people.
Yeah, I feel much the same.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, the caveat that we often throw out there is like, you know, the GM, the DM can run whatever game they want. They can, you know, regard whatever rules they want. They can make any changes they want, with the caveat of you may or may not have players to play that game with you. You know, especially if you subject them to it willy nilly.
See, and I think the willy nilly part. That's what I was going to bring up too, because it's
Yeah.
like you can make whatever rules changes. You can say in Pathfinder, where attack of opportunity is a feat you have to take, right? You can say everybody by default has attack of opportunity, where nobody has to take that feat, and you can say that to your players. But if your players like spend character creation resources to acquire attack of opportunity, and then in the middle of the second session, you say, oh, by the way, nobody has to take attack of opportunity. Everybody just gets it for free. That kind of makes your players feel disenfranchised, right? So as long as you're upfront about the rules that you're going to use, I think it is fair game. But if you're deciding rules on the fly that like make your players feel like you're against them, that you're deciding rules to hinder their progress or to make them feel less heroic or powerful or whatever, I think that's where you kind of get into trouble. That's where the rules kind of bite you in the tuchus.
Yeah, there's a couple areas. Like one is everyone has to have the same expectation, and if you're using a game with a bunch of set rules and you start changing them without telling anybody, you now have different expectations.
Right.
You know, so that needs to be laid out beforehand. And the other thing is just consistency in
Yeah.
how you rule. You know, if you run your game as if you had the chaotic neutral alignment, it's going to be problematic because no one knows what to expect, right? Like
Right.
essentially when I run a game, most of the people that have played with me a lot, they kind of have an idea what they can do and how I'll kind of respond to it. They may not know the specifics, but they kind of get the gist of like if they try to do this thing, you know, how what my response is going to be. So that informs them on the decisions that they make. You know, so that's why it's super important to be kind of consistent with your rulings.
Yeah.
But if you get a GM that rules this way generally, but then when their girlfriend's at the table and rule another way, you know, or spouses that and rule another way, all of a sudden that gets thrown out of the window, right? So
That's a really prudent example.
yeah, because well, you know why? Because I think we've all like experienced that at some point or another.
Well, I haven't actually had, man, have I had like a truly terrible GM? I've maybe had like one bad GM experience in my entire role playing history, but I've definitely heard some really really bad horror stories before. Like,
It's part of the fun. It's like what you see when you see a car wreck, you have to look.
yeah, yeah, kind of.
I mean, not that that's fun, but
No,
it's
no,
like
no. I get what you're saying. It's more like reflexive than anything else.
yeah.
And I sort of agree with that in a sense. Um, I just I guess I'm lucky. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Like I feel very fortunate to have a consistent group of people to play with that I enjoy playing with. I think that's probably something that a lot of role players can't say. And actually, on our Discord, I feel like I'm constantly seeing people saying that they want to get into XYZ or they want to try this thing, but they just can't find a group to play with, and that kind of makes me sad. Like I wish that more people had um, friends that were interested in playing, because I think it's even outside of the fact that I want, I want there to be more viewers and blah blah blah, like all that stuff.
Mhm.
It's just a shame that somebody who wants to play might not have the opportunity just because they're not in the right place. You know what I mean?
We had a DM, and we used to say the worst thing was if he didn't like your character, or if he did. Like the sweet spot was just to go unobserved and be like
Jeez.
very neutral on your character.
Oh no.
Like you
That's
didn't like your character, bad things would happen to them.
yeah.
You did like your character, he like became like very controlling and trying to like
Oh
make
god.
your character his vision of that character.
Oh.
Yeah.
This one of the like things, one of the slipperiest slopes I think in role playing games is when the GM has a PC as well.
Oh
When they
yeah.
when they get a character that's like in the party, but they're an NPC basically.
We made several videos on this, and one of them was like 4 reasons why you need a DM player character, and they're like they came to learn why they needed one and how to do it. And it was like 4 reasons why you're being a jerk by having this thing was really what the video should have been called. Probably the amount of anger in the comments.
I mean,
Some of
yeah,
the
because
mob.
I'm not saying that it's something like Jake played a character that was sort of in the party on Court of Corvids for a while, and it was fine. I didn't feel like disenfranchised by that. Uh, but I think a lot of people get it wrong. I think a lot of people like make Superman out of their
It's a
player
Mary
character when
Sue.
they're the GM. Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
happen to know. Oh, I rolled a natural 20 on this insight. Yeah, okay. Bring that dice out from behind the screen. We'll see how well your character actually does.
Yeah. I actually roll in front of the screen all the time anyway. It can be scary too sometimes. Like, ooh, this is going bad. Let's see how it
Yep.
goes. But I also roll poorly most of the time, so the players are lucky
That's
that
fair.
way. I roll marginally better as the GM than I do as a player, but there's some weird reason. Nah, like so, and also like a lot of people don't understand the difference between an NPC and the DM having a character, right?
Yeah.
And it's fine for there to be an NPC embedded with the party because that's just where the story went. It's just that like when the DM feels like they're not really playing the game if they don't have a player character in the group, it's like you get to be all the other characters. Like
Yeah.
that's your role in the game.
Yeah. It's honestly, in a lot of ways, it's more fun because like you get to experiment with all these sorts of like creative ideas about, oh, I want this character to be able to do these things. How would I build that in this system? Um, and it's you get to play a lot of different personalities. I think it's uh there's a lot of unsung benefits to just taking the role of the GM as it is and not trying to like add anything to it, not trying to staple on a character. You know what I mean? Like you get so much more out of the diversity that you have the ability to have access to.
Yeah, I feel like you have so much stuff to do already. Like I don't want to do player stuff. When I'm DMing the game, like generally, if we end up with NPCs in the party for whatever reason. They tend to fade to the back whenever combat happens, and occasionally players will ask, well, what are, if they're on a ship, what is the rest of the crew doing? Why aren't they helping us? I'm like, they're fighting their own battles. Like, I do not want to roll off against myself for one.
Yeah.
And I just generally just tend to narrate the NPCs doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Rolling against yourself is silly, because I mean, you're telling a story, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing damage to yourself, who are you disenfranchising by doing that?
If I want a bunch of people to watch me play with myself, I'll start our OnlyFans.
The funny thing is, you started that sentence. You said the word "if," and then like the rest of the sentence materialized in my head, and I was like,
"Oh no,
it's gonna be hilarious." That's funny.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, there's some weird things that people do, and to me, it's just like feels like mental masturbation. I'm just like, nah, we don't need to do that. It's fine. It's like, me as a GM, I feel like my job is to facilitate the story that the players want to create, right? And sometimes it lines up with what I had in mind, and sometimes it doesn't. And it doesn't make me any less of a player at the table. It just, I have a different role.
No, I think it's definitely like a give and take thing, right? Like you want to tell a story as a GM, you kind of have to, in order to like want the role in the first place. But your players also want to have autonomy, or else they wouldn't be playing, right?
Yeah.
So like you try to tell this story as a GM, and then your players use their autonomy, and then you're like, oh, that's cool, and then you just like go with the flow, and then it's fun. And then like, I think what it comes down to is when you let the players take your story and change it and like live in it and really genuinely be autonomous, it makes your story the best version of your story that could have existed, right? It's like you had like 5 people working on this instead of just one. And like, if you as a GM think that the story that you're going to tell is better than one that all of you could have come up with working together, maybe do some reflection and see if that's really true. It's probably not.
At this point, like as a GM, I struggle to not throw out at least like 6 plots at a time.
Yeah.
like that's just become like how I operate. I just throw out a bunch of plots. Like, I fill the blunderbuss, I pull the trigger, and then see what they do, and just react to whatever they do.
Yeah, and because Jake and I obviously talk a lot, I know that is what Jake does as well. I know for a fact that there are dangling story threads that Jake just didn't think that we were interested in pursuing, and so we just didn't pursue them.
Yeah.
The trick, I think, is to kind of like test the waters in a session before you do your prep, to try and figure out what your players are interested in, and then go prep that story, right? Like, try to do a little like a little prologue. If you're on mission A and you're trying to figure out what mission B is going to be, drop some hints in there and be like, oh, are you guys going to go do this afterwards? Or are you going to go do this afterwards? And then you can kind of prep, that arc while they're in the current arc.
So that's one of the other areas. Like, we got to a certain point where we just stopped prepping. And we just like write down, a couple sentences and be like, all right, let's see what they do.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's like a good thing for people to aspire to, but I think you and your group of friends are exceptionally well educated in the RPG space. So I think it's a lot easier for you guys to just be like, oh, this is how we're going to tell the story, because I know about I think once you do it enough, it almost becomes like an intuition, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that these things are going to be
that
strong
way.
enough. No,
right?
it never.
It came from years of writing like adventure modules, right? Flavor text and everything, and like pages and pages, and going, oh, they're not using any of this tonight. Here we go.
Yeah. When I first started prepping sessions, I would like test the encounter with like a group of characters that I made myself that were like similar to the player characters. I did so much prep work, but I think, and it was miserable, and I don't recommend anybody do that. It's not like, unless you really, really enjoy testing stuff, which is like, clearly I do. I work in IT and my code is buggy and crap. So, testing is important. Um, unless you really enjoy that, I don't recommend it. But what it helped me do specifically is it helped me develop an intuition for how things were going to work when it was presented to a group of players. Like, instead of having to figure out, oh, like, what's the CR for these things, and like, how does that relate to the level of the players and how many players there are. Instead, you just kind of like look at the monsters, like, what's the AC, what's the hit chance, what's the damage, what are their abilities. Okay, I need like 3 of these and 2 of these. Good, done.
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing is what you develop over time.
Yeah, I now like my head canon is you like doing these simulations and then you get it to the game and the players are like not doing anything that you did as the players in the simulation and they're like they're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, that's the other thing. But here's the thing though, and this is something that Jake and I talk about a whole bunch, both on camera and off camera. If you're the GM, you control everything. It's really easy for you to make the players feel autonomous without giving them actual autonomy. If you have a specific fight that they have to be in, and there's a corridor that splits off into 2 branches, if they go down the left corridor, they open the door, the giant dragon is there. And if they go down the right corridor and they open the door, the giant dragon is there. Did they have a choice? No. But they felt like they had a choice.
The illusion of choice.
The illusion of choice. And I don't think that that's a good tool to use all the time. I want to be abundantly clear about that. But
sparingly.
It is a tool at your disposal, right? So I find it difficult for GMs to like be able to justify most issues that they have, and like most of those like weird, quirky things that GMs complain about when they also have the ability to do things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things like you've prepped the monastery in the mountains that the players don't know about, and they decide to go to the woods. Now it's the monastery in the woods that they don't know about, right? It's not a big deal, and things really don't exist until they exist. In in an RPG game, or at least they don't have to anyway. But like I feel like those same people that are like sticklers for the rule also hate the illusion of choice. Yeah, and feel like you somehow cheated them. It's like, no, I kept you guys from wandering around and doing nothing.
Yeah, for 4 hours. The thing. Like, what you're expecting is for there to be infinite stuff to do. Like, around every corner, there's danger and adventure. But this world exists, and so if there was literally a giant dragon around every corner, the world couldn't exist.
Yeah.
So, there's like a give and take. In order to facilitate some sort of realism, everything can't be a problem. Some things have to be mundane. And if you expect me to be able to tell a story in that world, there has to be a little bit of plan reallocating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
The problem has to move to where the players are. If the players aren't going to move to where the problem is.
Like a good example would be like if you move the monastery to the woods, but then afterwards you move it back to the mountains. Yeah, that would be BS, right?
That's completely different. That's utter BS. I would call them out so hard on that.
But no, you've made a change that now exists in the other place. Just like the dragon's lair is in the new place. It's not all of a sudden it's not in both places. It was never in both places. It's just in the place where you guys were going. So, and
you know what I think is the real thing that those people don't like. I think they don't like it when you make those kinds of changes to avoid player consequences. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if somebody rolls
or inflict them
really bad on a perception check or something, and then you justify a reason to tell them the information anyways, that's kind of the what. But I did really bad. I want the consequence of having done really bad. Don't don't like spoon feed me the information even though I wouldn't have gotten it. Find some other way to tell that same story. Don't take the lazy way out, you know?
I feel like the alternative to that is, and this is kind of the way our group has gone. If you want players to know something, you just tell them. Don't make them roll for the thing that's going to decide whether or not the adventure continues or doesn't.
Yep.
Unless you have a plan for it doesn't.
Yeah, if the players are ever in a situation where they don't have any actionable intelligence, you're not doing your job correctly. If the players ever get close to approaching zero actionable intelligence, you need to intervene immediately with something that they cannot fail. A note, a message in a bottle, an ethereal being that comes to them and tells them stuff. And all of those may seem like very Mary Sue, right? And like not Mary Sue is the wrong word. Very what's it called? Deus Ex Machina. But it's better than them being bored, right? Like I think they could tolerate 2 minutes of conversation with a character that just happened to be there versus an entire session of wandering around looking for the clues.
Yeah. And so I guess the other thing is like, for us anyway, for me personally, is like, don't ask for a roll if it doesn't matter. The result doesn't matter.
Right. 100%. 1,000%.
You know, the flip side of that is players have to learn to not ask to roll dice, right? Like, you don't need to roll dice unless I ask you to. You can tell me what you want to do, you know, and then if I feel like it requires a roll, then we can roll dice, or I might just tell you something because you asked.
Yeah. I think players deciding to roll is the player being too shy to say that they failed at something outright. You know what I mean? The only reason that I think players say that they want to roll is because they want the opportunity to fail. Yeah. And I think if a player wants the opportunity to fail, they just want to fail, you know? Like, oh, can I make a perception check to notice XYZ? You don't want to notice it, do you? Like, why don't you just say that you're oblivious at the moment or something? Yeah. I don't think the GM's ever going to stop you from failing on purpose, you know?
Well, I think in a lot of ways in the game, it's kind of built in. That's an option. You don't have to, like, you can choose to not pass the save, right?
Yeah.
So it's realistic to do the other things as well. Like, also, like the other issue with players wanting to roll sometimes is it's a chain reaction. One player says it, and then they all want to roll, and it's like at our table, it's just like, no, we're not doing that. One person can roll with advantage, or two people can roll, but we're not doing we all roll until someone gets a success.
Yeah, that's. I think people forget that things take time.
Yeah,
you know, like if I'm gonna like investigate or like walk around and search for an object, the act of walking and looking through things in a room takes an amount of time, and you can't just spam that check until it succeeds unless you're willing to stay there for, hours. And if that doesn't have a consequence, then why did you roll in the first place? If staying somewhere for like a whole day just searching over and over and over the same places, if that doesn't have a consequence, just give the players the object that they're looking for and move on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's not fun for anybody.
No, it's not fun for the GM to have to say, no, you failed. You failed. Yeah. The DC is this. Can you roll this, please? No, you failed? Okay, cool, great.
You find a secret lever. Oh, we want to pull it. The roof collapses. Because you've annoyed me. That's old school GM in there.
I mean, I there's a little bit of that right now.
Well, it's funny, like the like really old school adventures like would make the players go out of the way to try and figure something out that turns out to be a death trap.
Yeah. That's my favorite part about. I'm gonna keep talking about Jake GMing, even though you're interviewing me. When we play Court of Corvids, he's not trying to kill us, right? Jake's not trying to TPK the party because that's boring. But we have a very, very good idea in our head of what the consequences of our actions are going to be if we decide to take a course of action, it's always clear you're going to have to fight these things and they're very strong, or you're going to have to deal with this specific like encounter and it's going to be very difficult. Like there was one time we were in a jail and the guard of the jail was passively threatening us. Passively is not the right word. The guard of the jail was threatening to like set the jail on fire if we were unruly or if we kept talking back to him or something like that. And one of the players decided to say something after the guard was like, you better stop talking. And so the guard lit the cell on fire. There was like hay all over the place and wood, and it was just on fire now. And so we had to break out of the jail before we burned to death. And it was literally just all of us on fire with our healer standing in the middle of the cell, AoE healing, using all of their spell slots so that we could have enough time to get out of this situation. And it was literally like, from GM to player, I told you he was going to set the jail cell on fire, and then you did the thing, and he set the jail cell on fire. That's how it works. I think that's how it should be. If you have a player that's going to have a consequence, and they understand what the consequence is, and they do the actions anyways, then they clearly want to participate in that scene. So go ahead and make the scene. Set the jail on fire.
Consequences don't mean anything if they don't actually happen.
Exactly.
It's very much like being a parent. You can't keep threatening to ground them and never ground them.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
Yep. You got to back it up with you got to back up words with actions.
Being a GM is like managing unruly children.
Yep. I would say depending on who your players are, but no, it's really just always like that.
Yeah, it ends up that way. So we're up on the hour mark because these go by so fast. Any final thoughts before we head out?
No, man. This was really enjoyable. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. It was great chatting with you. Really enjoyed it. We have to throw some dice together sometime.
Absolutely, that would be a blast.
And for everyone else, till next time, stay nerdy.